Governor right now. We have Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker. Welcome, sir. So first of all, your reaction to this deadly shooting, the second one in Minneapolis, and all of these images that we're seeing out of that city today.
Well, first of all, it's tragic and it's outrageous. The ICE patrols in our American cities are causing more damage than the president thinks that he's accomplishing. So what I can tell you is we went through this in Chicago, although the force in Minneapolis is multiple times bigger. And what you're seeing is that ICE, immediately upon the shooting taking place, without any investigation at all, has come out with its statement about what happened. Instead of saying we're going to investigate, they've just said this is what happened, it's all justified, brandishing of a weapon, et cetera. And that's what they did in Chicago. They did that to Miramar Martinez, who was shot 5 times by ICE and taken to court as if she had been the cause of it. And it turns out, what do you know? She was the case was dismissed. None of it was true. But ICE lied immediately, as they did with Silverio Villegas, also killed by ICE in Chicago. So ICE is a bunch of untrained and unqualified people. They've obviously added literally thousands and thousands of new agents. It's like it's become some sort of secret police force for Donald Trump. They need to step back from American cities. And in particular, right now, they need to withdraw, step back from Minneapolis. And we need to talk about how are we now going to proceed without them causing more damage and more violence rather than, them lying persistently about what they're doing and causing uproar in our American cities.
So, Governor, how should a White House react to a scenario like this? And does it differ from how you expect this White House to react based on your experience dealing with this administration?
Look, I think you can see over and over again, there is no understanding by the White House that they're the ones ratcheting up the violence, ratcheting up the assault on Americans. And the reaction by folks is, what do you know? Yesterday, 15,000 people in the freezing cold in Minneapolis protesting peacefully. Nothing bad happened yesterday with peaceful protests. Today, you have ICE agents killing somebody on the streets. An American president should be standing up, calling for calm. That's not what this president ever does. In fact, he wants the temperature to go up. Why? Because what he's looking for is an excuse to invoke the Insurrection Act, to bring actual troops into American cities. By the way, he may as well have already done that, because when you've got thousands of people wearing camouflage and masks and carrying automatic weapons, walking down the streets, they did this in Chicago, and assaulting people, then, they're already there. They tried to call out the National Guard. The Insurrection Act is his next move, and he's just waiting for something bad to happen on the streets beyond, with protesters doing something terrible. And that hasn't happened, thank God. The protesters have been peaceful, as they were in Chicago, but it's a hair trigger for this president.
Governor, you have just posted X. It happened just a few minutes ago. And here's what you write. I'm asking my fellow Republican and Democratic governors across the nation to have a unified response. We must all stand against the lawlessness being inflicted in our states. Sir, is there anything you and other lawmakers can do locally to stop these federal agent-involved incidents from happening? Are your hands tied without a significant intervention from Congress? Is the federal government overstepping state authority?
Look, I think Tim Walz and Minnesota is setting an example. He'll hear calling for the state to do the investigation. That's the right way to do it. And by the way, state laws may very well, and I believe have been, violated. I believe that convening our governors together to talk about how we can first bring down the temperature of all this and push ICE out of our cities, and second, a convening where I believe Republicans and Democrats can talk about what is the next step for managing our states against the onslaught of the federal government. But you know what? The GOP is nowhere to be found. They're the ones who scream and yell about federal tyranny, about interference with states' rights historically. And now, well, their president is, what do you know, violating states' rights and attacking our states, and Republicans are nowhere to be found to talk about it. We're Democrats. We believe in standing up for people's individual rights in our states. And the onslaught of the federal government is damaging to the peace of this country. Peaceful protesters should be allowed to peacefully protest. And we should be able to live peaceful lives without having the interference of ICE and Customs and Border Patrol knocking down doors. They're now talking about going into people's homes wherever they want to, even though they do not have a judicial warrant. You think that's okay, violating the Constitution in that way? None of us think that's the right thing to do. But, Republicans are too afraid of Donald Trump to say anything about it. Well, I'm saying something about it. I believe that Democrats ought to stand up and speak out, and Republicans ought to do the very same thing. When Joe Biden was president, they were all screaming when Joe Biden tried to call out the National Guard, federalizing them. And I screamed, too. I didn't think that was the right thing to do above a governor's call for a National Guard. And we all stood together against that. Now Republicans are silent on the issue. So I really think that we're in a precarious moment. And I just think that if we do not stop this now, if we don't abolish Trump's ICE and make sure that we have a trained force that is following the law, that this is going to erupt into something really terrible. It already is, but it could get vastly worse.
Governor, have you spoken with your counterpart there in Minnesota, given the two of you have joined forces and based on your experiences across your states?
I have spoken with the governor and connected with him consistently and indeed this morning. And I wanted him to know that the people of Illinois stand with him, that I stand with the people of Minnesota, and that we've got to stand together in sending a message that people need to be held accountable for their actions. And we don't know all the facts. You got to do an investigation before we, go after prosecuting somebody. But it appears that somebody who had a license to carry on the streets of Minneapolis was tackled and now is being tackled and shot perhaps 5 times. I heard 5 shots anyway. Yeah. Somebody should be held accountable here, but we got to do the investigation. The federal government doesn't want to do that because, they're just consistently, they have, a bad force of untrained people that are taking to the streets on behalf of Donald Trump and DHS and ICE and CBP. And then DHS just lies consistently. Tricia McLaughlin at DHS, time after time after time, she just puts out statements that are wholly untrue, proven to be untrue, time and again. And that's why when they put out a statement this morning, what can we believe? We can't believe it because constant lies coming out of them. Let's actually have the state do an investigation. That's the way to proceed here.
Governor J.B. Pritzker of Illinois, sir, on this very sobering day, I want to thank you for your time here on MS Now. I know we'll be speaking with you again. Thank you, sir.